A shocking allegation. A woman who claims to have been on the same Turkish people-smuggling boat as that dead Kurdish boy, Aylan Kurdi, now claims that Kurdi's own father, Abdullah, was the people smuggler, that he was the one driving the boat, the one who capsized it, the one who didn't have enough life jackets for everyone, the one who let people drown, including his own family. Here, look at a minute from the news coverage from Australia's Channel 10.
Zainab told her cousin about Aylan's father, Abdullah Kurdi.
He was the smuggler, yes. He was the one who's driving the boat.
Zainab repeats the allegation.
Yes, it was Abdullah Kurdi driving the boat.
She says they met another man, Abu Hussein, in a cafe and handed over $10,000 to get them to Europe.
Abu Hussein told them, you have to give me the money, and when you get safely to the to Bodrum, the island, you call me and tell me that you arrived safely. That's when Abu Hussein will give the money to Abu Ghalib.
The journey is so often perilous, but she was reassured.
He said it's more safer than a small boat. And he said, don't worry, the captain of the boat, the driver, is going to bring his 2 kids and his wife.
But Zainab claims the captain, Abdullah Kurdi, was speeding and says there were too many people in the boat and there weren't enough life jackets.
That's an incredible allegation, and if it's true, it might explain some of the bizarre inconsistencies of the story so far. I mean, the craziest fact to me is that these people were not in Syria or any other war zone. They had been living in Turkey for 3 years, where Abdullah, the father, apparently worked in construction. Turkey's a democracy. The Kurds there are a large minority. It's not a war zone. If you're in Turkey, you're not a refugee fleeing danger anymore. So that's the first thing. This smuggler's boat wasn't to get vulnerable people out of a war zone. It was to go to Europe to get free welfare. That's not my opinion. That's what Kurdi's sister, Tima, said in a TV interview last week. She said that they were all getting into a boat to go to Europe, not to be free. They were already free. Not to get away from war. They were already away from war. She said they were going to Europe because Abdullah Kurdi, her brother, needed some free dental work. I'm not kidding. He needed to get his teeth fixed. Here, listen.
The situation is Abdullah does not have any teeth. Has a story about it. So I've been trying to help him fix his teeth. But it's gonna cost me $14,000 and up to do it. He need denture, he need teeth implant. So when I told him, there is no way I can get you the money in one time because dentists they need to get payment right away. And Western Union, usually, if I send them the money, they only allowed $1,000 at the time, not under their name, of course. Has to be a third person to collect the money and give it to them. So I said to him, actually my dad, he came up with the idea. He said to me, I think if they go to Europe for his kids and for better future, I think you should do that. And then we'll see if we can fix his teeth. And that's what I decided 3 weeks ago.
What she just said there was bizarre. I mean, she's just lost 2 nephews to drowning, but she keeps talking about her brother's teeth again and again, on and on. That's got to be one of the strangest things I've heard. Now, maybe that's a normal human way of grieving, of dealing with the loss of your family. Maybe that whole dentist thing, though, is an alibi. It sounds better than the people smuggling thing. I don't know. It doesn't add up, though. If the dad needed thousands of dollars of dental work, why would he spend thousands of dollars putting his family on someone else's smuggling boat? Why not just pay that money for the dental work in Turkey? So even if we accept the sister's weird excuse, it doesn't ring true. But look, a fact is a fact. This was not a refugee mission. Now, Kurdi himself looks shell-shocked and frankly stoned. Again, could be a natural human reaction from a father who has lost his wife and kids. I'm sure I would look shell-shocked and stoned too, God forbid. I'd be crying. But witnesses on the boat say he was stoned then too on some sort of drugs. And what about Abdullah Kurdi's first comments last week to the media? According to the Wall Street Journal, Kurdi told some reporters that he swam ashore by himself, but he told other reporters that the Coast Guard picked him up and saved him. That's not a minor detail, minor discrepancy. That's a pretty central fact. Now, I don't know what happened on the boat. I find it odd in the extreme that a man's family drowns, his wife and at least 2 kids, but he manages to survive. Again, I don't know what happened, but I don't know of any dad who, if he was at sea with a drowning family, would put his own life first. Any dad. Every dad I've ever met would stay in the water literally until he himself was drowned, trying to save his family first. It's just too hard to understand. The conflicting alibis here are too strange. I think we're missing something. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. The world is crazy enough as it is. No need to cook up facts to make it crazier. I don't think this is part of some major propaganda scheme. I think it's more likely a minor propaganda scheme, a human smuggler trying to hide his own tracks. But he's being used as a major propaganda talking point by countless opportunists who saw his story, or at least the first version of it, as a battering ram to attack the borders of the West and national security of the West to let in millions of young Muslim men. I mean, here in Canada, the far left-wing NDP Member of Parliament, Finn Donnelly, just went on TV and flat out lied, claiming that Canada had rejected a refugee application from Abdullah Kurdi and his family. Take a look.
I felt compelled to act, and that's why I suggested that we draft a letter that we send to the minister, and I committed to her that I would walk it personally and deliver it to the minister and let him know what Tima had told me. We waited for weeks. Weeks turned into months. Just shocked and devastated that this is the result.
That was just a lie. Canada never received a refugee application from him or his kids. It's being acknowledged now, but the lie is still out there. Anyways, they're not refugees to begin with. They were in Turkey, but the lie was too delicious, and the CBC and the rest of the world ran with it. Even to this day, Abdullah Kurdi is still bizarrely blaming Canada for what happened on that boat. I mean, give the guy a break. He just lost his family. But he's a liar and a blamer if he thinks the death of his family is on our hands. At the very least, he put his own family on a tiny boat with no life jackets because, according to his sister, he wanted cheap dental work. And if the new allegations are true, he's the one legally and personally and physically to blame for the boat capsizing. It was his boat. Now, I don't understand the facts. I don't know them. They're conflicting. But I think it's important for journalists to ask questions and to be skeptical, especially when the mass of the media itself becomes gripped with a mania, as it has been on this story. Look, the boy Aylan's picture on the beach was the starter pistol for a media mob demanding, campaigning, exhorting the West to open up our borders indiscriminately to literally tens of millions of would-be immigrants from the world's worst parts. I mean, we don't know how many would come, just open borders. Maybe it all makes sense somehow. The story, Occam's razor, is the theory that says the simplest explanation is usually the right one. But every once in a while, things are darker. Let me tell you a story. 25 years ago, in October of 1990, this pretty, articulate, Kuwaiti 15-year-old girl took America by storm when she testified at a congressional committee in Washington that Saddam Hussein's soldiers were committing atrocities in Kuwait, taking babies out of hospital incubators, leaving the babies to die. Her name was Naira. Her last name wasn't disclosed, and she testified for 45 minutes before a congressional committee on human rights. Here's a clip.
The second week after an invasion, I volunteered at the Al-Adan hospital with 12 other women who wanted to help as well. I was the youngest volunteer. The other women were from 20 to 30 years old. While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators, took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying.
Well, say no more. A pretty girl talking about brutish Iraqi soldiers literally killing babies in hospitals. That night, ABC and NBC both ran video clips of Naira's testimony. No fewer than 7 U.S. senators cited her comments in their call for an invasion of Iraq and to liberate Kuwait. Well, who was Naira? Turns out that her last name was Naira al-Saba. She didn't publicize her last name at the time because that would have tipped people off. She was the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to Washington, Saud al-Saba. Kuwait had hired the government relations firm called Hill & Knowlton to help them motivate the United States to kick Iraq out of Kuwait. See, Kuwait's dictators needed to convince America that American soldiers should give their lives to give their dictatorship back to them. Anyways, Hill and Knowlton spent $1 million doing a feasibility study on how to convince the U.S. to go to war. And they decided that emphasizing atrocities was the way. Hill and Knowlton set up a front group called Citizens for a Free Kuwait. Look, Saddam Hussein was an awful, brutal dictator. Kicking him out of Kuwait was probably the right thing to do anyways. But Congress was tricked by a $12 million Hill and Knowlton campaign. I'm not saying that Abdullah Kurdi or Aylan Kurdi are this year's Naira. Like I say, it's much more likely that he's just a disgraceful human trafficker who profited off the misery of his own people, the Kurds, and then one day his own family died because of his incompetence or bad luck. At the very least, he's a liar and a blamer. Even his sister's defense of him is awful. But now a woman who says she was on the boat says Kurdi is much worse. I don't think he's a setup. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I just wish the rest of the media party would take 5 minutes off of their campaign for open borders and unlimited Muslim immigration to, do some journalism here. For TheRebel.Media, I'm Ezra Levant.